It's Fill Your Plate Now, where every bite brings you closer to the farm gate and further from what's unhealthy. Now, here's your hosts, Julie and Tammy, helping you live well by filling your plate well.
Julie, today I'm excited. We have a guest I've been wanting to get on for months, but she has just been so busy that it's taken us this long to schedule her.
Because she's a vet, right?
She's a veterinarian, a large animal veterinarian,
Awesome.
and always out in the field, so to speak.
And yes. And what's their mantra in the vet world with large animal? A happy or a healthy cow is a
Is a
happy
happy cow. Yeah, and a healthy cow produces more milk too. So,
Yeah.
everyone wants a cow to be healthy.
Yes.
And the veterinarian, who better than a veterinarian to tell us a little bit more about cow health and the things that are in place to help protect cows and make sure they stay healthy and are treated well.
Way cool. So I'm so ready, Tammy. I'm glad you brought her on.
Yeah, today we have with us Dr. Candace Runyon. She's a dairy veterinarian and also the mom of two small children, 3 years old
Yay.
and 1 year old. So that takes a lot of time too. And she's currently the director of animal well-being for United Dairymen of Arizona and co-owner of the mobile dairy veterinary practice serving dairy operations in Arizona. She actually is originally from Canada, but she's been here, I believe, for 9 years, is it? Okay. In her role at United Dairymen, she leads the animal well-being initiatives and collaborates with dairy producers on programs that support continuous improvement and long-term sustainability of the dairy industry. So, welcome to our
Thank
show,
you.
Candace. And we are so glad to have you here with us today and really want to hear a little bit more from you because I know you're a real international traveler. Tell us how you first got interested in being a veterinarian, particularly a large animal veterinarian, and what led to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me. This is really exciting. So I always wanted to be a vet from the time I could walk and talk. I knew that's what I wanted to do. I was that kid. I grew up in Canada, and when it would rain, all the worms would come out, and I wouldn't let my parents back out the driveway until I picked them all off the driveway. I was saving bugs and rodents and things like that. So I've always loved animals. I always wanted to be a vet. Both my parents grew up in Toronto, so very far removed from agriculture, really no concept of where your food comes from. And we moved north outside of Toronto when I was young into an agriculture area. And so I still was not directly involved in it, but I could see it around me. And I was always very curious, like, what are they doing out in that field with that interesting looking machine that I now know is a swather that they're cutting hay. But at the time, it just, I had no idea what they were doing. And I would drive by dairy farms and beef cattle farms. And I just always had a pure curiosity of like, what do they do with the animals in there? Like, how does the product get from what you are calling a dairy farm to what I'm eating at home when I'm eating cheese or drinking milk? And so I was always very curious. And then when I was in my early teens, I started working on a dairy farm locally. A lot of dairies in southwestern Ontario where I grew up, very small. Average herd size would be less than 100 cows. So very small dairies, where each cow has a name. And so that's the kind of dairies that I grew up working on. And so I started working on those. And from my very first time ever, first day of work, first day walking in a barn, I knew that's where I was meant to be. I just fell in love with cows in an instant, and I was like, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. However I have to get there, I'm not going to go out and buy a farm, so it seems appropriate to continue on the veterinary path and specialize. And as a veterinarian, when you go to vet school, you learn about all the species. So when you graduate, you technically can treat anything, but there is opportunity to specialize. And so during school, I did specialize in just dairy, and then that kind of led me to a lot of my world travels, is going to learn about dairy industry in other parts of the world to see if there's something that I could bring back to Canada or the US, wherever I ended up. I spent quite a bit of time in Israel learning about heat abatement, which now really can apply to what I'm
Probably
doing in
help.
Arizona.
Yeah, it helps a lot here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I spent significant time in New Zealand and Ireland going to dairies there and just learning from producers, learning from dairy industries around the world. And I just really now the reason why I continue doing this is working with farmers. Like they're such good people. They're so proud of what they do, and they really value the input. And especially someone like me coming from outside of dairy, I feel like my input is very valuable because I can relate to the consumer. So a lot of dairy farms are multi-generational where they've never not been around cows. They were born into it, they were raised on it, and everything they do seems normal to them. But every single question that I've ever heard from a consumer, I have had at some point in time. At some point in my life,
Cool.
I've wondered the same thing. So I can absolutely, even to the furthest extremes, I can relate to where those people are coming from. And I can understand that sometimes it's just a lack of education because it's really hard to just get on a dairy. Right. So that's why it's so important for me to be able to share that information coming from someone who I love farms and I love the farmers I work with, but I also really can relate to the consumers and the desire and curiosity that they have about cows and large animal vets and farms and dairies in particular.
And I have to agree with you. I mean, farmers are the hardest working people and such good people.
Such
And
good
they're salt
people.
of the earth, you know?
Yes,
So I
yes.
know, I love working for them too.
I love that you had such compassion for the little animals and that it eventually translated to our large animals. So, being a large animal vet and all of the challenges and rewards. So, we're curious about some of those, stories about rewards and even maybe some of the first big challenges that you faced becoming a large animal vet.
Yeah, so challenges of a large animal vet, it depends where you work. In Arizona, obviously the environment we work in is challenging. It's hot. Farms are outdoors. Farms run 24/7, so maybe not everyone understands that, but they run 24/7. So when you're sleeping in the middle of the night, someone's milking cows. Cows are generally milked 2 or 3 times a day. And with the amount of cows we milk, that often takes 24 hours to get all those
Mm.
cows through twice or 3 times a day and then wash all the equipment in between. So in the middle of the night, someone's out there milking cows working. So if there's an emergency as a veterinarian, if there is, the farms have a maternity department, just like a regular OB at a human hospital. I'm on call if there's an emergency in the maternity department and someone needs assistance helping a cow give birth. I'm on call for that. So it's challenging being on call 24/7, balancing that with a family. People that work at bigger practices generally share that on call load, so you're not there all the time. For a long time, our practice was just my husband and I. So between the two of us, one of us has been on call for the last 8 years.
Wow.
So not a lot of vacation time, not a lot of, it seems like every time we plan a dinner to go out, someone calls.
Oh, no.
But, they're calling because they need our help, and I would much rather them call and get there and give them the help that they need. But you're on the road a lot. It's not like a small animal clinic where you go to work and the pets come to you. Being a large animal vet, you have to go to them because it's not so easy to transport cows, and it's just not realistic that every cow that needs something is going to get transported to me. So we travel a lot. In Arizona, we're very lucky. The dairies are actually quite close together compared to other parts of the country where there's dairies, where vets would be driving quite a distance. The furthest I drive is maybe an hour and 20 minutes just to get around the valley. We have dairies over on the west side, some southwest, some southeast. There's not as many directly east anymore, but I kind of I live in the middle of all of it, so in either direction I'm driving. But yeah, you're on the road a lot. But those are the types of challenges. I like to be at the dairy, so I don't mind driving to the dairy because I think assessing the facility and the environment is big big part of animal health and trying to problem solve. I think if every small animal vet could go to your home when your dog has a problem and look at what treats do you have on the shelf, and how are you actually, are you free feeding your dog
Yeah.
when you're telling me you're only giving them a small bowl, so that would be ideal. But small animal vets don't have that luxury. We do. We get to go to where the cows live and where the people are working with them. But it can present challenges. But rewards wise, I absolutely love everything about it. when you go to school to be a vet, you think you're going to be working with cows or animals, but most of my job, I would say, is people. I work probably more with people than the cows, to be honest. It's managing people because the dairies are so big here. They have specialized departments, which is amazing, and that's what I love the best about these big dairies that we have in Arizona. Is everyone is in a certain department, and they're there because they love it, and they're there because they're good at it, and that's their specialty. It's not a small group of people trying to spread themselves thin doing everything. It's no, you milk the cows, you're in maternity, you're in nutrition, you're in the calf barn, and you're there because you're good at it. And if you're not, or if you don't love it, if you find after a couple months it's not a good fit, then we move you somewhere else. And maybe you can clean pens or vacuum manure, things like that. There's so many opportunities for people to work where they want. And so my job is a lot of employee interaction, training those people. I write the protocols on the dairy
Mm.
and then training those people to understand what the protocols are, because I, as the small amount of large animal vets that are in Arizona, we can't be at every dairy every day. So we rely on these teams of people that we've worked closely with to run the show day to day and then call us if, anything's out of the ordinary or they have a question.
Yeah, and
One of the things that struck me about what you said, I've never thought about it this way, but she's basically some aspects of your large animal veterinary practices. You're basically a baby doctor on call, but it just happens to be for the bovine.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think it shows because they are family farms, really
Right.
almost all of them in Arizona,
Mhm.
and really across the country are family farms. Um, they have a passion for what they do because it is hard work, and
It's
what you do
extremely
is
hard.
hard work too.
Hmm.
And I know sometimes you're getting up at early hours of the morning or you get emergency calls. Give us an idea of what a typical day would look like.
Yeah. So the funny thing is a typical day is very untypical and unpredictable.
Uh-huh.
As a herd vet, you have your kind of bread and butter of what you're doing. And so generally, the dairies in Arizona are big enough that the vets are usually there every week. Sometimes I have big dairies that I go to twice a week. And then there's dairies that are maybe on the smaller side that you might go
Mhm.
to every other week,
Mhm.
which to me is amazing because we're looking at the cows, looking after their health, looking after the environment, helping with management, and we're there every week. Like we're truly a part of the team. Um, and so our input is very valuable and our feedback, because we're looking at different farms every day, and the workers that are on that dairy are, looking at the same group of cows, the same environment every day. That's hopefully some perspective that we can bring by coming in and going to different farms. But a typical day is we would go, if Tuesday I have, herd A scheduled, I'm going to go to that herd and do what we call a herd health visit. So we're just looking at all the animals. Um, diagnosing if cows are pregnant, if they have any health issues. We're looking at the calves all the time. We're looking at the fresh cows. So a fresh cow is a cow that's recently given birth. So we're always watching those animals to make sure that they're healthy and they're, putting on weight. They're not losing too much weight. All parts of the life cycle we would be on every visit assessing. We're looking at the nutrition. While I'm there, I'm always looking at where the feed is there enough, is it close enough to the cows that they can reach it. We want cows to eat lots so they can make lots of milk. So the logistics of that is really, really important as what they're eating. So that's kind of where I can contribute, because the dairies always have a nutritionist that can be a vet, but is not always a vet, but it is someone that has a high level of education, specifically in dairy nutrition. They're very, very good at what they do. But typically, as the veterinarian, we're at the dairy more often. So that's where I can contribute to nutrition. Is I'm not formulating the diet. I'm not helping them select specifically what they're feeding the cows, but I'm helping them manage how they're feeding the cows, when they're feeding the cows, what pens, what order, how much, that sort of thing, and just making sure and working in, as a team with the nutritionist to give them feedback on what I'm seeing on my herd visits. So we do a little bit in the nutrition area, but a lot of calf work, um, a lot of just herd health, the milking parlor, everything like that.
I've always been envious of dairy cows to a certain extent because they all have a personal nutritionist. I mean, at least the dairy farm does.
Personal doctor,
Yeah,
personal
personal
nutritionist,
doctor.
It's
someone
crazy.
trimming their
Yeah,
nails, and
yeah.
yeah,
That's exactly it. And you think about like a dog. I don't know a single human that has a weekly vet visit or a biweekly vet visit for their
yeah,
dog, a special nutritionist that's looking at everything in their diet, of,
It's wild.
spa treatments,
yeah.
however often needed.
We're
It's,
kind of denying ourselves, I think. But
yeah.
I'm, yeah, I'm playing off of Tammy's question. She just asked for the typical, which in reality is every day is not typical. But can you recount, because we love the examples and we love the stories of something that was totally unexpected when either you got to the dairy or you got the call?
Yeah. Cows are so funny. They are so curious and they have such distinct personalities that I get chewed on all the time and my hair pulled. Like if I'm walking inside the pens, for example, I will use an ultrasound to confirm that a cow's pregnant. Just like in a human, we look at the baby, we check the heartbeat, we check for twins, which is always sometimes a surprise. Sometimes I'll see two. I have one time seen triplets on
Oh,
ultrasound.
Wow.
Yeah. So then we mark that in that cow's file so that we know she's very high special needs. She's just like a human. If you're having
Mhm.
twins or triplets, you're going to be a little bit higher risk. So we want to pay special attention to you. So those are things I'm looking for that are always exciting and out of the ordinary. But, I get cows chewing on my hair, pulling my hair, the ultrasound cords. Sometimes they'll pull them in the summer when it's really hot. Sometimes I'll wear like a backpack with water in it. And like, I stopped doing that because they chew on my stuff so much. Yeah, and anytime you wear anything that, like, normally I just wear coveralls, but I've had to put boot covers on before that are plastic and they're a little bit noisy, and the cows that's not familiar to them, so they immediately need to know what that is. So they're all sniffing and licking, and I've had one chewing
Curious.
on the plastic before where I'm like, I need to get out of here.
Oh, that's
Yeah, they're
funny.
so funny.
so one of the things that I've been struck by is that dairy cows are more, it feels like they're more personable. And then, so I was asking a dairy farmer that, and part of it is his point was, well, they always see us. When they're born, they see us. And if it's not us, it's the vet or, one of the workers. So dairy cows get really used to people. Whereas in the beef industry, it's a little bit different because
Yeah,
most of our cattle are raised out on the range and some of them are pretty wild. So
yeah.
I think that's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, and I think dairy cows they do need a lot of care, and
Right.
the veterinarian can't be there all the time. I know though you have to train the workers on
Mhm.
exactly how to care for the cows and what to look for. What does that involve? How do you train the workers to make sure they're taking good care of all the animals?
Yeah, so that's a big part of what we do. And like Julie said, the fact that we handle cows, one, because we're constantly intervening to check their health, and they're getting milk 2 to 3 times a day. So we have to have docile cows. We want cows with good personalities that have no problem with a human coming into the pen and telling them it's time to go to the parlor. And in general, 99% of the cows, when they see that gate open or even before the gate opens, they're waiting for their turn. Cows like routine, and they know when it's their turn to go in the parlor. Like if the parlor is running behind for some reason, if something breaks down and they're like an hour behind and pen 4 is supposed to be next, and that milker doesn't come out and open the gate, those cows will be making so much noise at the gate because they're like, it's my turn. Why am I still here waiting?
Hmm.
So they like routine. And so because we're constantly handling them, we're walking them up to the parlor, we're asking them to go single file into a parlor and stand there while we put the milkers on for, anywhere from 4 to 8 minutes. They're standing there with a milker on, and then we let them go and we expect them to walk back to the pen they came from. There's a lot of interaction with humans. It's a lot of very calm interaction. So one, we want docile cows that they don't mind that type of human interaction. But then a big part is training the employees, because we also want employees that understand cows need calm as well, because cows will not let their milk down if they're stressed. So
Mm.
we only have so much time to milk every cow. So when they come in the parlor, if they're feeling stressed or anxious, if they've had a bad interaction or it's their first time going and they're nervous, when they get in there, you put the milking unit on that cow, it doesn't suck the milk out. The
Mm.
unit sets on there and it uses a vacuum to hold itself in place, but the cow physiologically has to allow her milk to come down.
Oh.
And if she's nervous, you'll just see the machine pulsating with the vacuum on and it's massaging the teats, but there's no milk being forced out. So we have to train, we want docile cows that are calm, that come in, and that the workers are calm and not making noise and not scaring the cows, not rushing them, that they can walk in, they're calm, that as soon as we stimulate them, put those machines on, automatically the milk starts flowing and come so that they're fully milked out in that allotted time, because we don't have time to wait all day for that cow to milk out because she's nervous.
Mhm.
So we have to train the employees to be very, very calm. And that goes with everything. It's same with, when they're in maternity. Cows are prey animals. They're always wondering, is there a predator around? So we don't want to hover over them. So training the employees to understand early signals that a cow's going to give birth, and then giving her space. Monitor her, because if she's having difficulty, we want to be able to intervene if needed. They need to know when they need to call me, but monitoring from a distance, knowing which cows to watch and making sure that that cow is given the space to have her baby. And majority of the time they have zero problems calving on their own. It's very rare that I get called, and usually it's, there's twins or it's coming backwards, things that, same with humans, would cause more issue than a baby coming out
A higher
exactly how it's,
risk.
yeah.
Yeah.
And calves are supposed to come out front feet first. So the opposite of
Oh.
but they can come out back feet first as well.
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow.
So they can come out either way, but generally if they're coming backwards, they need a little bit more assistance.
Assistant.
Yeah.
So drill down a little bit more on that employee training to ensure good animal welfare on the dairy, because that's kind of like a number one priority for UDA, the United Dairymen of Arizona, and for all the dairy farmers in reality. But they have workers that have to get that training. So what's kind of some of the things you typically do?
Yeah, so as I have two different roles and I should touch on both of them. So as a herd veterinarian, typically you're working with that specific facility, and every dairy is going to be a little bit different with how many cows they milk, how often they milk them, um, how many employees they have, and what their facility setup is. So you kind of bring all of that into the picture. And then as the veterinarian, we write the protocols or work with the farm to develop protocols. So we want to say, okay, when a cow does this, this is what we're going to do. This is how many times a day we're going to milk. This is the prep procedure in the milking parlor. This is how we're going to treat the hospital cows. If a cow comes in with these symptoms, we teach the employees how to do a full physical exam.
Oh.
And then they would follow the protocol that if the cow has these symptoms, we're going to treat with this, we're going to monitor with this, we're going to give IV fluids, supportive care, those sort of things. And then if they have a cow that maybe doesn't respond to the protocol, they would call and say, this cow, she has a little bit of a fever. I've treated her based on the protocol, but her fever hasn't come down today. Could you come look at her? And those are the things that I would get called out for. But in general, we're doing employee training. So small groups in their specialty area. So I would do employee training as often as needed with just the maternity team. So we would sit down and walk through what are the signs of labor, when to intervene, depending on if it's a cow's first baby or it's her 10th baby,
Okay.
because that all is variable, just like in a human. And so we would train the employees to understand that, decision-making trees, when to move a cow to the hospital, when to keep her in her regular pen with her pen mates. Cows are very susceptible to social stress. So moving a
Aren't
cow,
we all? No.
yeah, that's true. It's true, right? So moving a cow to a new pen, there's always risk to that. That now she has to restart her social hierarchy within that pen. So it's not just, oh, it's easier to move her over here, let's move her. It's analyzing, does she need to move to a hospital pen, or can we give her supportive care and leave her with her regular group of herd mates. So it's helping training them to make those types of decisions in all areas of the dairy. So working with the feeders on what I talked about earlier, the nutrition side of things, and the nutritionist would always be involved in those meetings, and working with the calf department, the people taking care of the baby calves, all those protocols from start to finish. Animal handling is a huge one that we work on. What's appropriate handling? What's a safe distance for safe for the cow, safe for the human? Um, and what tools can we use? We move baby calves around on the dairy. So do they go in a little wheelbarrow and we can push them over to the calving area, the next pen, or to the calf barn? How can we move them? Those sorts of things. Cows, we have what we call down cows. So if a cow slips and falls, they're very top heavy. So that often the older cows don't just pop right up. It would be like, if a toddler fell, generally they pop right back up.
Right. Well, how
If an
much does a cow weigh?
Yeah.
They can weigh, generally the ones we work with are the older ones, 1,600 pounds. I've seen them
Yeah,
upwards of 2,000 pounds.
big girls.
They're big and they're very top heavy with these little legs. So if they slip and fall, we have very detailed protocols of how do we get that cow up safely, so there's no injury to her, but also safe for humans, because it's very challenging working with very large animals. So the dairy needs to have proper equipment. So then how do we use that equipment to be safe for everybody and ensure animal welfare?
So many steps.
It-
I mean,
it's
it's
yeah.
amazing how much is involved. And we talked, I think, a little bit before we started the podcast about how much we didn't know before we were involved with dairy. What do you think are some of the biggest misperceptions the consumers have about cows and dairy?
Yeah, there's a lot. And I know this because I've been there.
Mhm.
I know this because I've had all those questions. Every question that I get asked that someone in the dairy industry maybe thinks like, where is that question coming from? Like, isn't it so clear that we do it this way? But I understand, because I'm like, no, no. At one point, I thought it was done the other way. And so I have been unclear about that. Um, and so that something, my role at UDA, which is different than my herd veterinarian role, is I'm the director of animal well-being. So basically, I work. And so I should clarify, UDA is United Dairymen of Arizona. It is a cooperative. So all the dairymen are members, and it is the business that markets their milk. So the dairies create the milk, and then UDA has customers. So then they decide, where does the milk go? Who is getting that milk? What are the customers in Arizona? Whose milk is going to go to what customer based on logistics? Um, and so I'm kind of that bridge between the farmers and the co-op, but also the co-op and the customer, because the customer has a bridge to the consumer. So what the customer is demanding of us, so the customer would be, the brands, they're the customer, and then they have consumers, and they're getting pressure from consumers of, we want to see these things in dairy. So that's where, as a herd veterinarian, I understand the tiny things on the dairy and how they work, but then I also help to bring all that stuff back to the dairy in regards to animal welfare audits. So that's a big misconception, is that there's no one monitoring the dairies. And actually, the dairies go through an unbelievable amount of animal welfare audits from multiple different sources. So one of my roles at the co-op is to do well-being audits on every farm. So I go to every farm in Arizona that's within the UDA umbrella. I do evaluations. I go through, I look at every single animal in the dairy. I look at every single one of their protocols. I make sure that they're working regularly with a veterinarian, that the veterinarian has signed off on all the protocols, all the training. We do use an online learning platform. So there's a combination training on dairies. Half of it is in person, on the job training. And then there's a required component that is Dairy Kind. We use a training platform that's specific to training on dairies with dairy cattle on Arizona dairies. And so all of the dairies are required to complete a certain subset of videos. And so I monitor compliance on that. So I make sure that when they hire someone new, that person completely understands what the expectations are around working on a dairy, that we care for the cows, that, zero tolerance for any sort of abuse or mistreatment, the responsibility to report anything that they see that maybe they're not sure about. And so I monitor all that compliance as my role. I'm doing it as a herd vet
Mhm.
with the herds that I specifically work with, but then at UDA, I'm doing it with all our Arizona herds, monitoring compliance. And so there is that level. And, that's something that I am super passionate about and care deeply about. So trust me that I am monitoring all of that. And consumers can trust that that is all being monitored. And dairies are so open to feedback, to advanced training. We have third-party audits that come in. So that would be a second-party audit because I'm directly working for the co-op. But we do have third-party companies come in and do many, many audits on the dairies as well, where they all have different requirements. Some are extremely stringent. And that goes into employee safety as well as cow care, all those sorts of things.
So a double layer, really.
Yes, they are getting
So many
monitored.
regulations. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of regulation. And it's not just from within the co-op. We definitely within the co-op create policies. I'm part of those conversations. But I am the one on farm implementing them, and then I'm the liaison for those third party audits where I go to the dairy, participate in the audit, kind of oversee the feedback from the third party auditor, and then make sure that the dairy understands. And I do the follow up of if there was anything on the third party audit that maybe, a protocol didn't exactly match what we saw the employee doing, then we follow up on that and say, did you change your protocol and we just need to update it in the book? Or was that employee doing something that was maybe a little bit outside of the original protocol? So those are the types of things that I would follow up on after a third party audit. And that would be at my role at UDA.
So I want to say to our listeners, news alert, news alert. Tell your family and friends that dairies do audits and also third-party audits. So, checking on animal welfare and the care of the cow, basically, is what.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the whole cow care and the quality of our herds, give us some of your favorite traits or qualities about the cows, because it's evident to me and just talking to Candace that you have a real passion for animals,
Mhm.
including saving worms on the
Yes.
on the driveway
And
when
birds
you were little.
too. I saw that there was a post about you saving some birds that
I
Oh
were
my
save
gosh.
sick,
everything.
So
and it wasn't even a large animal.
it
Yeah.
wasn't even a
No,
large
I,
animal.
I don't discriminate.
So, what are some of these qualities about the bovine, especially dairy cows, that you really admire and have a passion for?
Yeah, I mean, at the top of the list, cows are metabolic athletes.
Oh, wow.
They are so impressive, especially after being a new mom and going through all of that, trying to feed a baby and looking at cows and the ease with which it appears that they do it. It's unbelievable. They are the amount of milk that they can make and maintain their health. And it really comes down to creating an environment for them where they're comfortable, they want to eat lots, they want to drink lots. We look at the space per cow for water access, feed access, there's regulations on all of that,
Mm.
making sure cows are just super comfortable in their environment, that they're cooled all the time so that they can make milk, and that they can do. And every breed is a little bit different. We have the black and white, the classic cow that everyone, which is my favorite cow, is a Holstein. They are so impressive. They make so much milk and they're beautiful. And I grew up in the show world where we're showing cows and you're
Yeah.
taking them, and they're just so impressive. And then that translates down to herds. Some of our herds here range from 1,000 cows to they're milking 15,000 cows, and every cow is beautiful. Every cow I could just watch all day, watching them walk, watching them go into the parlor, watching them get milked. Like their udders are super impressive. Genetics plays huge into it, and I think that's also something consumers maybe don't always know everything about, that we are selecting genetics to build the perfect cow all the time, where we're not just saying we need her to make as much milk as possible. We're looking at, are her feet and legs really strong? Because we want our cows to live a long time, which I think is another big misconception. We want cows to live a long time. There are cows on dairies in Arizona right now that were born and raised here that are 15, 16 years old. And
Wow.
I see them all the time. And I see the same ones every week. And, everyone thinks small dairies are good because the cows have names and everybody on the farm knows every cow by name. But I will tell you, I work at dairies that milk 9,000 cows, and I see the same cows every week. And they all have numbers. It's not a name because there would be way too many names, but they all have a number, and I see the same cows every week. And I see cows, talking about what I love about cows. Cows have such a strong, like, social hierarchy and social grouping. It's very important. It literally plays into every decision that we make on the dairy. But generally, when cows are born, they get numbers that are sequential. So this cow's number 61, the next cow's going to be born is number 62, the calf born after that is 63. And then I will see them on the dairy as milk cows, several years down the road. And 61 and 62 that were raised together as babies are in the same pen and they're eating next to each other. And then I see them walking up to the parlor together. Like they
Mm.
have besties, which I just love.
That's
Cows
funny.
have
Yeah,
besties.
That's
they have
funny.
besties. They really do. And
That is
then
so cool.
there are bossy cows, the cows that generally most dairies, when the cows go up to the parlor to get milked,
Mhm.
then when the cows are out of that pen, they all go at once from one pen. Then that's when they'll come in, they'll groom the pen, fluff up the bedding, vacuum up any excess manure, which then goes to a digester, which is a whole other cool thing that dairies do. Um, and then, so they're cleaning up the whole pen, they're scrubbing the water troughs, cleaning everything, and they're laying fresh feed. So the cows know that when they get done milking, they're going to go back and fresh breakfast is on the table. So you will see the bossy cows that want to be the first ones to pick their eating spot, push their way to the front to get milked first. And all the milkers will tell you this. Like they'll know, oh, that cow 67, 85
Stand aside.
Oh, wow.
every day. Or
That's funny.
when they come into the parlor, they have the choice if they want to go to the parlor on, depending on the design of the parlor, but often they have the choice if they want to get on the left side of the parlor or the right side. And there are certain cows where they will only go on one side. So, I'll get to the end, I'll be at a dairy and I go in the milk parlor and the cows are filled up on the right side and the left side is only half full and there's one cow down waiting. And I asked the milkers, like, why didn't you get her in here on the left side and milk her? Oh, no, she won't. Every day, she will only milk on the right side. So they have to wait for all the cows on the right to milk, let them all go, and bring that one cow in because she refuses to go on the left side.
And
But
she's willing to
proof,
wait. Huh?
yeah, but proof that the workers are paying attention and really applying that animal
Yes.
welfare, and they get to know their personalities,
Yes.
even though, in a large dairy, it's a number, not a name. To your point, I mean, you're moment by moment showing the evidence of this passionate care that people have been in the dairy industry for some time that really get. I
Yeah.
just love those
Yeah,
stories.
Yeah.
that's great.
And like one big thing that I always say to people, and it like is so controversial, but it kind of blows their mind is, a lot of times, and I'm guilty of it coming from small farms. Big farms are labeled as factory farms. That's a
Yep.
Mhm.
a term that we hear. But growing up, I worked in a factory building cars for 2 summers. And I will tell you, I love the term factory farm because after working in a factory, I learned that everything has to be done perfectly. There is 6,000 processes to build a car, and I was only one of them. But if I messed up my process, my tiny little process, everything down the line had to stop. Everything has to be done perfectly, and everybody has their specialized department, and they're doing the same thing every day, and they have to do it perfect or it messes everything else up. So when I think of a farm, that's exactly how they work. They're
love it.
specialized departments and everybody has to do their job perfectly. They have to make sure that cow gives birth perfectly so that she comes into milk and she's not stressed. And then the guys that are monitoring the fresh cows, which I explained was a cow that's just given birth, the guys that are monitoring them, watching them for signs of stress or any health issues, they have to make sure that cow is perfectly healthy before she moves to a milking pen. Because then in the milking pen, if she goes into the parlor and she's not feeling well, the whole parlor has to stop because we now have to sort that cow out to get her over to the hospital for special oversight.
Wow.
So it slows everything down. So every piece of that so-called factory has to work perfectly.
Well, and I think consumers, when they drive past a dairy, they just see a dairy. They don't realize how sophisticated and
It's
intricate
very.
everything is. And you use a lot of technology when you're out there on the dairy. Now, are there anything, or is there things you're excited about that are on the horizon, technological advances, or things that can help you even detect, more about the cow or
Yes, absolutely. Just like every other industry, AI is, coming on board, already being used on dairies. Um, I should back up and explain that every dairy keeps records of every cow. And 99% of the dairies, especially big dairies, it's computer software programs. So every cow has her identification, which is generally a number. She has a file in the computer that starts the minute she's born. It's entered into the computer, the gender, the mom, the dad, all that data is entered in the computer. Whether she was born on her own or whether the mother needed assistance, all of that's in the file. And then anything that happens in her life cycle, if she's given a vaccine, it's in her herd file.
Mm-hmm.
If she gets moved to a new pen, it's in her herd file. So all of that data is being collected on a hour by hour basis on the farm. On, you can imagine, 15,000 cows and 15,000 young stock, and it's all in one computer system. And so generally in the past, farms have had to, what a big part of what veterinarians do is analyze that data. So you're pulling reports, running numbers, looking at, how well are we doing in certain areas, where are areas for opportunity. That's a big part of what a herd veterinarian does, using data. And now farms are starting to use AI. So there's AI software that is then able to go into your herd software and analyze, like, hey, this lineage, this family that you're using, you have the great 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 grandmother and the great great grandmother and
Oh,
all the way down to the newborn baby that was just born. Those cows are more likely to get a sore foot and need to go see the trimmer and get a pedicure. So
Because
next time.
genetically, that's been their medical history.
that's
Okay.
Yes,
great. They
yes.
Wow.
can
And then, so
analyze.
then you can look at that animal and say, okay, when we breed that animal, her offspring in the future, we want to make sure that we're using a sire, a father that has really strong traits for good feet and legs, and balance that animal out. So AI is really cool. And we look at milk traits like that, things like udder conformation. How do the teats sit on the udder, because it makes it easier for the milkers to get the milking unit on, and stay on, all sorts of things. And then in a totally different area, we're using AI for animal welfare. So dairies are starting to put cameras on that can monitor. So the cameras are watching all the time, but there's AI within those cameras monitoring how the employees are moving the animals. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the employees, sometimes it does. There are ones that can analyze cows when they walk to see if they would flag a cow of, potentially this cow might have a sore foot. Let's sort her out. They have automated sort gates, so the computer will tell the sort gate, I'm flagging that cow for a sore foot. Let's sort her out. She'll get automatically sent down to the hoof trimmer or the hospital crew who's specialized in that. Then they'll examine that cow and say, yep, she had a stone in the bottom of her foot. We cleaned it out. We gave her
Wow.
pain medication. We wrapped her
that's
foot to protect it.
great.
We put her in a special pen, and we're going to monitor. That all goes in the computer.
Are those cameras that are set up for AI, are they normally stationed throughout the barn and everything? They're not necessarily on the cow, obviously. They're
Yeah, no, they're in
okay.
the environment.
Oh, in the
So
environment.
one place that every single cow has to walk on a dairy is an exit lane out of the parlor. So things like lameness
Oh, duh.
scoring and
Okay.
body condition, looking at cows if they're too thin or getting overweight. That's a good place that most dairies would put it, because regardless of which pen they're in, they're all going to have to exit out of the parlor. So that's typically where we'll put stuff like that. But there are AI cameras that are looking at all handling. So they would be through every area of the dairy, every barn, the calf barns, all sorts. So we're constantly, it's just a management tool to see what are we doing really well. And then for an owner or a manager to look and, oh, we could definitely do better there based on what I'm seeing on the camera footage, because you can't be there 24/7. So it's just an added
Right.
layer of management to help us make sure we're doing everything perfectly for the animals.
That's
Amazing
fantastic.
technology.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my last question to all this, and it still ties in to the technology for you as a vet, what are you excited about with today's technology to improve your services as a vet?
Yeah, the role of the veterinarian is definitely changing, and larger dairies I think are moving in that direction faster than
Mhm.
smaller dairies. When I worked with smaller dairies, it's still a lot of individual animal medicine, where if they have a cows put a lot of calcium in their milk, so sometimes that can cause them to lose calcium in their body and they get a little
Mm.
bit weak, and we have to supplement them with calcium. So typically if we had what we call a milk fever cow, but it's a hypocalcemia cow, in the past in smaller dairies, if they had a cow like that, they would call the vet to treat that. Larger dairies now have very, very specialized employees that would treat that on their own. They would be able to do a physical
Mhm.
exam based on their training, and then they would be able to treat that animal on their own. So
Amazing.
the role of the veterinarian is more higher level management,
Oh,
helping
okay.
watch AI footage, design welfare programs,
Hmm.
help change facilities. There's lots of times where I'm the one on the dairy and I see cows trying to move, and it's like, oh, that corner's really sharp. Those animals don't want to turn that corner because they can't see around the corner. And it's as
Wow.
simple as seeing something like that and then going to the owner and saying, hey, is there anything that we can do to modify the gates in that corner or take this wall out because they can't see around the corner? And then, oh, yeah, if that's going to be better for the cows, let's do it. Dairy farmers are so innovative. They'll change things and modify things. It's everything I've ever asked for. They've
That
obliged me.
that's
So it's
amazing though.
yes, I love it.
I mean just how carefully and how intricate all of the management is and everything you do.
It really is.
And for our listeners who haven't been on a dairy and have been listening to this, what are the two or three things you'd like them to walk away remembering about dairies and animal care?
Yeah, you know, having come from a non-agriculture background, every day when I go to work, I think about if my mom was here with me today, would she want to buy milk for her family? If she was here and she saw the cows and she saw all the jobs that were being done, and she saw the environment and she saw the milking parlor, and that's really what I base all my recommendations off of is everything in dairy is science based. We're not winging it. There's a lot of research in dairy. So that's where the veterinarian comes in. I'm constantly reading new research, and all the consultants on a dairy, not just the vet. There's a huge slew of very, very smart people that consult on dairies. um, so they're constantly looking at new research and making recommendations. And so everything that we do on the dairy is ultimately, like you said, to make a happy cow.
Hmm.
Happy cows are healthy cows, are low stress cows, and happy cows make milk. So that's what we want. That is our goal. And there are so many layers to make sure at the forefront, is the workers, the owner, and the veterinarian, hands on. But then under that, there are layers of consultants, layers of regulation, layers of auditing, and lots of research that goes into dairy. And all of it is surrounding animal care because the best cared for cows, the most comfortable cows are going to make more milk. They're going to be healthier, less time in the hospital. And that's ultimately everyone's goal is just to have happy, healthy cows that live a really, really long. I would love if every cow was 16 years old. They're
Oh,
awesome. Those
that'd be
old
great.
cows, they know what they want. They know where they stand in the herd. They don't take anything, they do exactly what they want to do when they want to do it. So I love old bossy cows. But truly, everyone that it is a very hard job. The workers that work on the dairies, they work a lot of hours, they work long shifts, they work in the heat. They're not there because they don't love it. Every single one of them grew up in dairy, has dairy experience. Most of them have been in dairy longer than I've been alive. So when they ask me for help, I'm like, really, I should be getting my advice from you because you've been doing this longer than I've been alive. Um, Everyone is passionate because it's such a hard job. You're there Christmas morning, you're there Easter morning, you're there on your birthday. It's a very hard job, so no one's doing it if they don't absolutely love it. The people that don't love it move on pretty quick.
And I
That's
can tell that they love the cows.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I always love talking with you. I always learn
Yes.
so much,
Good,
and
I'm
you are
glad.
so knowledgeable. Thank you so much
You're
for
very
being with
welcome.
us
This is
Yeah.
really
today.
fun.
We
Yeah.
really appreciate it. We'll have to have you
Yes.
back on
Yeah,
again.
I could talk about cows all day, so
Oh, and I could listen
anytime.
all day. So
We can tell by your passion that you guys, you're part of the whole process that makes happy cows, healthy, happy cows.
Yeah, it takes a lot of people. But yeah, cows are awesome.
well, thank you.
Yes, thank you guys so much.